Hello and welcome to Our American States, a podcast from the National Conference of State Legislatures. I'm your host, Ed Smith.
We want to get them involved in civic engagement, and that can look different for each and every young person.
That was Tammy Wehrle, the Legislative Education and Outreach Officer in the Wisconsin Legislature. She's my guest on the podcast. I wanted to talk with Tammy because she regularly interacts with young people about how government works and runs a variety of programs that bring kids into the Capitol. Americans of all ages do not score well on surveys of civic knowledge. One recent survey found a large majority of respondents could not pass a basic civics literacy test, and another indicated a third of respondents could not name all three branches of government. And testing of 8th graders in the U.S. and other industrialized countries also reported a decline in civics proficiency. Tammy, who is a classroom educator and holds a doctorate, oversees a variety of programs in the legislature that can involve kids as young as 12. She thinks there is real value in young people seeing the legislature from the inside and understanding the range of roles necessary to run a legislature. Here's our discussion. Tammy, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks so very much for allowing me the opportunity to join you today and talk about what I'm really excited about doing in my career and discussing what happens with civic education in the Wisconsin Legislature and what we do to promote civic education in our state.
Well, great. Let's start there. Tell us about your role as a civics educator at the Wisconsin Legislature.
Yeah, so I'm a legislative education and outreach officer for the Wisconsin State Legislature, which is a nonpartisan position. I have the honor and the joy to be able to connect to young people, to the Wisconsin government, and to the legislature and the legislators. I'm the administrator of a few programs that happen in Wisconsin. The most prominent and the one that many people know about, or we hope that they get to know about, is the Senate Scholar Program, which we have for juniors and seniors in high school. That allows them to come to the Capitol for a week and to learn all about all facets of the government. The other programs that I started working in Wisconsin Legislature in 2015, and I've created a couple other programs, Page for a Day program, and with that, just what it says, students come, and we take anyone from age 12, so about 6th grade through senior year, and they come and spend the day with us, and every day looks different for that program. And then I also have Kids at the Capitol, and that program is for younger kids from anywhere from ages 5, 6, usually up until about 12, and they come spend a half a day with us. So I can tell you, one of my biggest roles for the job that I do is try and get kids excited about civics education and what the government does and the work that we do at the Capitol.
Let's talk about that. I think most people who work in the government or public policy space hear story after story that young people don't know how government works because they don't get any civics education. Like most things, I expect the real picture is a little more nuanced. But tell us what you've found working with young people in Wisconsin.
Yeah, so, thinking of Generation Alpha and Generation Z as they are trying to figure out the way of the world, one of the things, that I see is that young people need to be empowered. And with that, we have to use the knowledge to give to them what we know. And with that comes, the learning process of, and with my programs, in Wisconsin, they can come to the Capitol and actually see it. Just for some background, I'm an educator. I was a teacher in the classroom for 20 years before I came to work at the Capitol and came to work for the legislature. And so, I was in the trenches, and I know, what happens in the classroom. And one of the things that I see in our state is that, we make it important to include civic education in our standards. All 50 states have standards that include civics education, and 39 do require, at least one course. And so that's something that is important. And and I'm going off of memory here, about 21 or so require the citizenship test as well. What I can tell you is that, with that knowledge and with the civics education, they're able to learn about the structure of government processes. We want to get them involved in civic engagement, and that can look different for each and every young person. I had some young people yesterday. They belong to their actual student senate at their school, and I was chatting with them, about how important it was as they are leaders in their school, but then also then when they graduate to be a part of the political process, whether that means running for positions, of course, first and foremost, voting, but to go out and be leaders above and beyond. One of the things, too, I think with knowing, and especially with the programs I work with, civics education, is getting them to see and be a part of what we do and seeing it from the inside. And with many of the programs I have, they can come during session days and they can watch and sit on the floor. And sometimes they get to do page jobs, meaning get to run errands for the senators and the legislators. Getting them involved that way and being able to see it from the inside out makes a huge difference for students.
I think it's probably fair to say that government and government service are not held in high esteem by much of the public. I don't really think that's a new phenomenon, but it does pose some challenges in attracting young people to legislative staff jobs, for example. What sort of feedback do you get from the young people you meet with, as you did yesterday, when you ask about interest in working in the public sector?
So one of the specific things with getting students involved is so that they can see, what there is behind the scenes of it's not just about the legislators themselves, but there are so many other people who help and guide and make the process work. When we talk about partisan versus nonpartisan, on the partisan side, they have staffers and they do a lot of the behind the scenes work. Even with many of the nonpartisan staff, we do so much of the the behind the scenes work, even in the nonpartisan piece. The institutional knowledge is important, and we want to make sure that the young people know, well, if you don't want to run for an elected position, we have a lot of other things to offer in the government. I expose young people we have a lot of legislative service agencies, and so we have a reference bureau, made up of our drafting attorneys. Those that draft the bills and the legislation, because not all legislators come to us with a law background, and actually most of them don't nowadays. And in our legislative council, those are the people, our attorneys, who help guide us with any legal questions that may arise, as well as helping us run committees. We got the fiscal bureau and the audit bureau, and of course, don't leave out, human resources or our technology people too. So what I like to do is make sure that the young people are aware that these positions exist also. So I think that's something, getting kids to see the big picture, and being around and coming to the Capitol. That's something, in the future, I'd love it if, all 50 states, and, I even work with people internationally, if they could have, similar programs that we're able to provide in Wisconsin, be able to allow the young people the chance to see what happens, behind the scenes, not just what they're gonna see in the news and in the newspapers and read about. And, that leads us down a whole nother level of media and press, and trying to extrapolate the information of what's real, what's true, what's not true. And so with that too, And I can tell you with the Senate Scholar program that I offer kids, we do meet with members of the press, with members of the media, and they can talk to them and learn about what they do in regards with politics and chasing the stories, making sure that they can get the correct information out there. And that, again, you get into that nonpartisan piece. Which side are you on? Which side are you reporting? So I think that too, exposing young people to so many different various jobs that take place in the government are so important.
As someone who spent more than 30 years as a print journalist, I think having young people meet with members of the press is a great idea. I think most people don't have a very firm grasp of what reporters and journalists generally do and how they approach their jobs. Meeting with legislators is a good idea, too. NCSL used to have a program where legislators visited classrooms, and I wonder what you think about that model of civics education.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. When I first started working in the Wisconsin legislature, I made sure to incorporate NCSL's Legislators Back to School program. They don't offer that right now, so the program no longer exists, but the approach and the importance of the program certainly exists and continues in Wisconsin. Getting our legislators into the classrooms, going to the school districts is important as we're trying to foster those connections and expose them to the people who do these jobs. Because I have my programs. I mean, I can only take limited numbers. I can't take every student in the state. So I think it's important that we continue to get the legislators in the classroom. So I can tell you from my own personal experiences as a teacher, I always invited politicians from both sides to come in and speak with students. And so I was able to get a lot of folks coming into the classroom and talking about what they did, as well as letting the kids get to know them as human beings and who they are and what they believe in. And it wasn't always political conversations necessarily. It was oftentimes getting to know and talk about what they do in the processes, not necessarily, getting up on soapboxes and proselytizing any information. It was telling about their jobs and what they do when they come up to the Capitol. Also then, more specifically talking about what they're trying to do in their districts. In Wisconsin, and with many states, of course, our regional areas have different needs. And, we go to the very urban areas in the larger cities, like a Milwaukee, but then we also then have northern counties who are still, in need of broadband internet. And so we have all of these different, topics that the legislators are able to do.
You've mentioned people doing somewhat similar work in other states, and I wonder how you keep in touch with those folks, share ideas, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, thanks to you guys at NCSL, you have provided so many opportunities for me to connect, whether it's the summit or even, I belong to some subgroups. Then I get to meet others who do the same jobs as I do. So we get to come together face to face. And of course, we also will do Zooms or other meetings too, or just your basic emails. But I have been able to, through the different conferences with NCSL, to be able to get to meet people we belong to, or I should say, I belong to the office I work for. I belong to the association ASLCS, which is for the chief clerk's offices. Last year, I was actually on the strategic planning committee to put together a new committee on civics education. It was something that we deemed as a society was very important for us to be able to give us a space to come together. Whether it was going to be on a website, we're still formulating these pieces, but giving others, again, who do or want to do, different types of programs like we do in Wisconsin, giving them a place to be able to go to, or a website, and names of those of us who do this across the country. So, there are people that I work with from North Carolina to Washington State, Virginia, Florida, Oregon. And actually, just yesterday, I met with a young lady from DC who does the same type of job I do out at the U.S. Capitol. So I got to meet Mary Beth Wagner yesterday. She was visiting the Capitol, and she came down and we talked. And so, I made a connection that way too. In our respective roles that we do across the country, we borrow and steal things from one another, ideas, different programs, as we're, trying to figure out and formulate what we're going to do for young people, in the legislative world. We want to work together, and we want to make sure, we have the different resources that others are able to use. Not every state is doing the exact same programs. Some have page programs that work with high schoolers. We don't. In Wisconsin, we have college students, who are our pages. So, it just varies from state to state, but it's always, amazing to hear, what other states have. It's just me in the state of Wisconsin. I look to other states to, see how many people they have and working in their programs and exactly who they work for and how they get their jobs done. So I'm very fortunate, and I really appreciate NCSL and the support that they have given to us.
So what's the role of legislators here? How can they help contribute to the civics education of young people and the larger population as well?
Yeah, and I think, and I find myself very lucky in Wisconsin. I've had strong support from the legislators that I work with and I work for. One of the things is, we keep using the word, civics education, but also the education so that they're aware of the programs that we have, that we can offer to young people. I have found that people are very willing, once they find out about what we have to offer, to be able to even utilize those who are, working in civics education within their state. And a lot of times, I have to always backtrack and say, well, I'm a licensed educator, and this is the reason, that I got this position, is because, they wanted to make sure that somebody had the right qualifications to be able to connect with young people. And so I think having the open dialogue with the legislators and the office staff has really helped, me as we are, progressing with the different programs that we have to offer. And then it's not, just the programs that the kids can come and be a part of at the Capitol, but it's also what they can use for different fun activity books or study guides that we have. So the literature, being able to get that out as well. And that was something, when we go back to the Legislators Back to School program, NCSL used to have little pamphlets and other things that were helpful. And I still have those, and I still use those. It is making sure the legislators know that they have the support that they need to be able to talk with young people. And that, with the going into the classrooms and meeting with students and talking with them face to face is I think that it is very important. As we know with the young people, they're going to be future voters, and they are going to be our future leaders. So I think it's important for those who are doing these positions to be able to, talk with young people.
So as we wrap up, Tammy, let me ask you, what do you think the future of civics education looks like in Wisconsin and around the country? And given your experience and perspective, what do you think it should look like? Are there things you'd love to see happen in your state and in other states to raise the profile of civics education?
Yeah, and I believe at the state level, continuing to give the opportunities to young people, as well as incorporating more programs to even those who aren't necessarily school aged. Because I've had requests, for people who are college aged, as well as people who are outside of school and are older. We don't want to necessarily coin the old phrase, but people who want to know what's happening and have questions of how the government works, because it does, just because you're 50 years old doesn't mean still how the legislature works. So I think that's something that I'm going to continue focusing on and trying to improve, in Wisconsin, and making that a priority, as well as, teaching people about the process and allowing them to take an active role, in shaping what happens, in the communities and in improving the future, in politics, but as well as that understanding.
Tammy, thanks so much for joining me today. I think this is a topic of great interest because honestly, I think most of us really don't know what the state of civic education is in the country. And I think we all know a little more thanks to you sharing your expertise. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Ed.
I've been talking with Tammy Wehrle from Wisconsin about civics education in the program she runs with young people in the Wisconsin Legislature. Thanks for listening. You can check out all the podcasts from the National Conference of State Legislatures by searching for NCSL Podcasts wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast, Our American States, dives into some of the most challenging public policy issues facing legislators. On Across the Aisle, host Kelly Griffin tells stories of bipartisanship. Also check out our special series, Building Democracy, on the history of legislatures.